You ever hand a student a book and think, yes, this is the one. This is the book that will finally turn them into a reader. And then you see that same book a week later, stuffed in the back of their desk, looking exactly as unread as the day you gave it to them. Yeah, same. Hey everyone, I'm Nick. This is DrCrankyPantsReads, and today we are talking about assessing motivation, because knowing whether our students are actually engaging in reading is just as important as putting good books in their hands. It's not just about who picks up books. It's about why, how, and what happens next. So let's talk about how to actually assess reading motivation beyond just asking, hey, do you like reading? And getting a forced smile and a vague nod in return. If we want to know how kids feel about reading, we can start by asking them. But here's the thing. If we just say, hey, do you like reading? We're not going to get useful answers. Kids know what we want them to say. So instead, we use structured self-reports, surveys, quick check-ins, and reflections that actually dig into their attitudes about reading. Some useful questions to ask. When was the last time you read a book you didn't want to put down? Do you feel like a strong reader? Why or why not? If you could change one thing about how reading works in our classroom, what would it be? You can do this through some short surveys. Think Google Forms, paper handouts, or even really quick exit tickets. You could use a reading interest inventory, and these are questions that will help you figure out what genres, topics, or formats they actually enjoy. You could also utilize simple rating scales. On a scale from 1 to 5, how much do you enjoy reading right now? These give us a baseline, but they also help us track changes over time. If a kid goes from rating reading as a 2 to a 4, something is working. Self-reports are great, but let's be real, kids don't always say what they mean. Sometimes the best way to assess motivation is just to watch and take notes. This is where anecdotal notes come in. Over time, we can start seeing patterns in which books kids keep gravitating toward, who pretends to read versus who actually does, and who abandons books frequently, and why. Jot down observations like, student spent 10 minutes flipping pages without actually reading. Looks like they might need help finding a better book. Student got really into the book discussion today. Maybe more social reading opportunities will boost engagement. Student abandoned the last 3 books they picked. Might need support choosing the right fit. Basically, this is about reading the room, not just trusting the, yes, I love reading answer on a survey when you know you just saw that same kid using their book as a pillow. Anecdotal notes help us track individual students, but sometimes we need a big picture view. This is where structured classroom observations come in. Instead of watching individual students, this is about tracking how the whole class engages during reading time. Some things to look for. How many students actually stay engaged during independent reading? Who's talking about their books with their peers? Are students avoiding certain reading tasks? Why do we think that is? This kind of observation is going to give you some practical insights into what's working and what needs adjusting. If 75% of the class is actively reading, but a handful of kids are zoned out, those are the kids who need some targeted support. If no one is engaged, time to rethink the reading culture and structures in the classroom. Reading journals are pure gold when it comes to understanding how kids engage with books. Instead of asking kids to log pages and minutes, which we know some of them just fill in randomly, we ourselves might have just filled them in randomly. Have them write quick, low-pressure reflections like, what was the best moment in your book today? Did anything in your book remind you of your own life? And if you could ask the author one question, what would it be? These are simple but powerful ways to assess not just if they're reading, but how they're connecting to books. Also, it helps identify trends. If a student is consistently writing, "This book is boring," it's time to help them find something else. Not all kids love to write. Some would rather talk, and we can use that to our advantage. One-on-one or small group discussions can give us a deeper look at reading motivation. Some good conversation starters include, tell me about the last book you finished and what made you stick with it. Have you ever struggled with a book but kept going? What helped? What kinds of books make you want to read more? These conversations can help us spot frustrations, preferences, and successes that don't always show up in written reflections. Also, if a kid can talk passionately about a book, but never actually reads their own, we might need to rethink how they engage with text. Maybe the occasional audiobook would work better. Maybe graphic novels would feel more accessible. The key is listening to students and then adapting. Sometimes we need more than just observations and student reflections. Structured assessments like the Elementary Reading Attitude Survey or ERAS, or other research-backed tools can give us quantifiable data on motivation. These surveys typically measure things like how much kids enjoy reading overall, how they feel about reading in different settings, such as school versus home, and how confident they feel as readers. The benefit? Easy-to-read data shows us broad trends across the class. If we see a dip in motivation, we know something needs adjusting. The downside? Numbers don't tell the full story. That's why we balance this with the qualitative measures, journals, discussions, and observations. So let's recap. If we really want to understand reading motivation, we need to use multiple assessment tools, not just one. And these include self-reports. Let students reflect on their reading habits and attitudes. We also want to be taking anecdotal notes, tracking long-term trends in engagement and behavior. We also want to observe our classroom at a larger scale to see how reading motivation plays out in real time. Reading journals are a goldmine, capturing emotional and cognitive engagement. And interviews and discussions allow us to hear directly from students about what works for them. Structured surveys? These are going to use numbers to give us a broad view of motivation levels. And the real takeaway? Motivation isn't just about what kids say. It's about what they do. If a kid says they love reading but never actually reads, we need to dig deeper. If a kid says they hate reading but gets super into a book discussion, we need to harness that. Assessing motivation isn't about ranking kids from best reader to biggest book avoider. It's about figuring out where the disengagement is happening and what we can do about it. Now, I want to hear from you. What's one way that you assess reading motivation in your classroom? What's worked? What's surprised you? Drop it in the comments and let's talk about it. I'll see you in the next one.